everyone, welcome back to the Data Unscripted podcast. I'm Ori, and with me today, as always, is Daddy. How are you, Daddy?
Hey, what's up, Ori? Doing great. How about yourself?
Not bad, not bad. And today we're talking about something that is super important but often overlooked in the data world, which is data validation. In software development, the concept of testing is very common, but not in the data world for some reason. Why don't we start by defining what data validation is, Daddy?
You got it. Okay, so sure you can all relate to that. Data validation can help you avoid getting these angry calls from executives saying that their dashboard is showing crappy data, okay? You know, this is the tricky part of data bugs. It doesn't really behave like software, right? They're usually detected by the end user without something crashing along the way. So let me explain. Data validation involves stuff like checking the accuracy, completeness, and consistency of the data to ensure that people can trust it, right? This is usually done by checking the data against a set of predefined rules or constraints before it is consumed down the road in dashboards, AI models, etc. By incorporating data validations as part of your data development process, you get, one, obviously improved data quality, right? The key is to catch errors and inconsistencies early in the data pipeline and not when people actually consume it. Another benefit is consistency. It helps make sure that your data meets the standards and formats across various systems, making everything work smoothly. And most importantly, trust. Validated data increases the confidence that people have in the information that they're seeing. Make sense?
Yeah, sure. I mean, remember that people make business decisions based on this data. The last thing you want is the CFO complaining that the sales figures are wrong or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we know what it is and why it's important. Let's talk about the types of data validations that you can do. One straightforward data validation that I can think of is validating that a field is not empty. What are more complex data validations?
Yeah, sure thing. Okay, so data validation always seems like this amorphic concept. Let me try to put it in practical terms. So let's look at a few examples. Let's start with schema validation. This involves checking if the data is of the correct type, right? You want it to be a number, a date, text, whatever. For example, ensuring that an age field contains only numeric values or verifying that a date field is in the correct format. Schema issues usually happen when a data source you're dependent on changes one of the columns or their types. And this usually breaks down the entire pipelines. Modern tools automatically check that for you. Another example is range validation. So this checks if the data falls within an acceptable range of values. There's a lot of common sense in that, right? So for example, you need to verify that a percentage field is between 0 and 100. More complex examples is outlier detection. So think of a revenue column, for example, where the sales rep has accidentally added another 0 to the deal side. This is an outlier
like to have
value.
That problem.
yeah. But this usually skews up everything. And format validation. This ensures that the data follows a specific format or pattern, right? So for example, take you want to check for a correct email format or URL, stuff like that. You have consistency validation. So this checks for logical consistency between related data fields. So this often requires a deep understanding of the data. So take, for example, you need to ensure that an order date is earlier than the shipping date.
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense?
Sure.
Cool. What else? So you have uniqueness validation, right? You need to check that there are no duplicate entries in fields that should contain unique values. So you can think of a straightforward example that a customer has a unique ID. But there are more trickier examples where the uniqueness is determined by a set of fields, say like an order ID and date. And this is not a trivial task to do. Right. And of course, the list goes on and on. This is just like a handful of examples.
Well, it's a pretty long list already. So there's a lot to think about here and to grow,
right.
Okay, of course. So we talked about the types of data validations and kind of what you can achieve with them. Where do you actually implement this in the data development process?
Okay, so data validation can actually happen at various stages. Most commonly, though, you would implement those validations as part of the data transformation process. like when you actually execute those transformation code, you run the tests and validations against the output.
Right.
Make sense?
Yes, but when we talk about data validation, how does this fit in the broader picture? For example, observability and monitoring, where do these things happen in relation to each other?
You know, I'm really glad you brought it up because there's a very important distinction between data validation and data observability, right? So observability, namely monitoring and alerts, they take place outside of the data transformation process and look for issues in production. And intuitively, of course, it's always better to have data validations as early in the process as possible to prevent that data from reaching production. But you would have both of them in place. And they have their,
It makes complete sense because obviously, we're dealing with more and more data as time goes by, and having robust data validations in place when you have so much data is becoming increasingly crucial. And you still need observability because you can't catch everything in the data validation phase.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Ori. It really is important investing time in setting up good data validation and monitoring in place. And that can save you a ton of time and headaches in the long run. And again, as I've already mentioned, in data, trust is everything.
I couldn't agree more. And honestly, this is all the time that we have for today. So thanks, Dadi, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, sure. Talk to you later, Ori.
Bye-bye.